Welcome to this week's edition of MotorFX. I'm Russell Fleming.
And I'm Robert Barry.
On this week's edition, Robert and I have a look at the new practical Toyota Hilux, and we get a lot of fresh air in the new Ariel Atom.
All this and more on this week's edition of MotorFX. Today, Russell, we're looking at the Toyota Hilux, a 4x2 extended cab 3-litre diesel version.
So this is the base model, but the practical model aimed very much at the tradesman market.
Very much at the tradesman and the private contractor. You can easily get mum, dad and two small children in the cab. Alternatively, the great thing about the e-cab is that you can take the rear squabs out, and during the week a tradesman can secure his toolbox in the cab and lock it up.
Yeah, something I like the idea too. You could hang a jacket or a shirt if you're heading away for the weekend as well on the back. There's some extra space to live outside your working week.
Indeed, which is something you don't get in single cab utes, and this is a great vehicle. It sits in between the single and the double cab. So it gives people, the best of both worlds almost.
I'm amazed, hence sitting in the back of it, just to give you an idea of the amount of space, dropping it down to that extra cab size. Every time I've looked at a Toyota, it's been the double cab, so used to the smaller tray. This is amazing. This is getting up into the sort of Holden Ford size tray format, isn't it?
It's actually possibly a little bit bigger, Russell, and the great thing about this tray is it's pretty toughly built. You've got 4 anchor points, you've got the behind the cab, you've got the ability to tie ladders and bikes and other things to it as well, so securing your load is not an issue.
I was quite impressed to see as a standard again on the back of the tray, the steel. It's not a roll bar as such, but just this extra protection behind the cab.
Yes.
But more importantly, when you've got the longer loads, your plumbing pipes or bits of timber or a windsurf or something like that, you can throw it through the top without that fear of damaging the roof.
Absolutely.
And that's always been a problem I've found driving utes in the past. Amazed too, Robert, we can put, 750 kilos on the back of this? 750
kilos in the tray itself, or you can tow a braked trailer up to 2,200 kilos.
That's a lot of load for a mid-sized truck.
It certainly is, but the 3-litre diesel pulls it beautifully. They're not going to have any issues about keeping up with the traffic with this engine and gearbox combination.
Robert, tell me about pushing it forward, automatic and manual. Are the two options with this model?
No, this model is solely manual.
Good old-fashioned, that's what it needs to be.
Well, the tradesman market, automatic is becoming a little bit more popular, but for Toyota, no, if you want this, you have to take it in the manual.
The other thing that I was a wee bit surprised when it turned up is it's obviously the basic end of the commercial market, but the options that you can address and tart the truck up to whatever you want it to look like.
Toyota have a huge range of genuine accessories, from nudge bars to monsoon shields, of course the Toyota tow pack, which they recommend that you fit for towing, maximum load, wheels, just you name it.
They can put the lockable hard lids on, the chrome roll bar if you wish.
Absolutely.
As I said, amazing the amount of room in this. I think if you're looking for a good, basic, well-priced trade vehicle, this has certainly got to be an option.
Yes, definitely. Definitely an option. Very competitive market. It's up against similar product from Ford and Mazda, but Toyota have been the #1 ute for 15 years, and I can't see that changing.
Great servicing, great resale, all in all, the Toyota Hilux is a great package.
Indeed it is, Russell.
Well, look, I hope you've enjoyed that. We look forward to having a look at something else exciting in the new car world next week on MotorFX. Watched them go down the road, we've dreamt of owning them, we've read the articles, we've read an awful lot about the new Ariel Atoms, and today we're lucky enough to be looking at two Atoms, an Atom 1 and Atom 3, covering an 8-year time frame. And with me I've got John. Hi John, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Very good. And John is the proud owner of Atom number 1. First of all, why did you buy one?
I've ridden motorbikes in the past, and was something where you get to that stage in life, and I suppose the clip that's made it most famous was the Jeremy Clarkson clip where he says, you know, for all you middle-aged guys that dreaming of getting a motorbike, and I've got all the scars from riding motorbikes, I sort of looked at this as an alternative, and that was sort of my reasons for buying one, and I'm glad that I have. It's has a lot of experience that goes with it, which is very similar to a motorbike.
One of the things that's been really interesting, we met about 3 weeks ago at the MoTat show, and we've been in touch over the last couple of weeks talking about the cars and the weather. You wouldn't think so today, but the weather has been a bit of an issue over the last week, but it hasn't worried you. You'll drive it in any weather.
Yeah, that's right. The car is actually made in the UK, which their climate is, from what I believe, is quite a lot damp, and they certainly get a lot more snow and ice than what we do in Auckland. And they drive the cars pretty much all year round in some parts of the UK, and it doesn't seem to put them off, so I don't see why it should put us off.
Well, it's the old story, as long as you keep moving in the wet weather, you're not going to get wet. But John, look at the car, there's no windscreen, it's you, it's your face is the first thing that the bugs in the weather hit.
Yes, well, that's where I would liken it to a motorbike. You get that open air feeling, you know, that you do when you're sitting up on a bike. The nice thing about it is if you want to, you can go without a helmet, especially on a day like today, as long as you've got something, you know, that'll protect your eyes.
I notice in the front on the floor you've got a full-faced helmet, so what are you up to when you put the full-faced helmet on?
Just depending on how cold it gets. If I'm at night, you know, the temperature certainly is increased, or actually the temperature goes the other way when you're at speed, and so it's a bit more comfortable to wear a helmet. The other thing is rain. Is if it is raining and you haven't got a helmet on, it's like being shot in the face with salt, basically.
Exactly. One of the questions I had, and I got very, very confused as we look at the number plate on Atom 1, Ariel Atom 1 powered by Rover, and I was under the impression that they were Honda powered, which, as we'll find out a wee bit later from Jared, the Atom 3 is. Tell me about the change. What happened there?
Well, being a British manufactured car, they try to have as much British content in it as possible. A lot of the lights you might recognise are actually off Land Rovers. Certainly the body and the frame is something that's only unique to Ariel, but the motor is it's a motor that was designed by Lotus, a British company of course, and it's lifted out of a Rover. In fact, you quite often find it in the back of MGFs, the late model MGFs. It's 1.8 K20 is what they call it. It's all aluminium in its construction, which makes it a very, very light engine. The block itself is also aluminium and has floating liners in it, and the whole car assembles, instead of having head bolts, which of course would strip out of aluminium if you put any force on, go right through the entire engine from the head to the sump. And then of course Rover as a manufacturer disappeared or was bought up, as with many of the British car companies. So what happened was there was an association between Rover's manufacturing and Honda at the time that Rover stopped manufacturing cars, and the Ariel looked at the Integra Type R, or Honda Integra Type R engine, as an alternative, and that's what they went to in the Atom 2.
And as I said, we've got the Atom 3 beside us. Jared, hi, welcome to the program.
Good, thanks, how are you?
Very, very good. We'll take a tour around the back of both cars, but while we're talking about the Honda engine, let's talk about some of the changes between the two cars.
Well, perhaps the most noticeable thing from the outsider's point of view is the tubes on the main diagonals. In the Mark 1, Atom 1 and Atom 2 cars, they go alongside facing back towards the front of the car, whereas on the Atom 3 they've done it backwards, so it now looks swept in the direction that the car would go.
So that gives it a better ride?
They've made it slightly wider, so larger people can fit in it a lot more easily. But in terms of better ride, yeah, with the motor they've got anti-vibration mounts holding the engine to the chassis, whereas the Mark 1, Atom 1 and Atom 2 cars, they are directly bolted to the chassis. There's a lot more vibration.
So, John, you have a slightly rougher ride, do you?
Yes, something that is one of the quirks of the car. In the very early Atom 1, which they actually made a very, very limited number of, it was a determining fact towards some just minor failures. You know, if you're vibrating something that's on the road all the time, you're going to get the odd little nuisance breakages. It was things like indicator bulbs would go, simply the filaments being shaken all the time. And guys that have the older cars have done things like fitted LEDs or changed the inside of the lights to overcome all those sorts of things. It is quite a lot coarser ride. The Atom 2, of course, had a lot more refinements in it.
So this is a car you'd have no problem. It's a nice day hopping and not sure where you're going, you'd just go for a drive.
Exactly.
How long have you owned the car now?
I've had this car about 2.5 years.
And we were talking earlier, there's very few, not only in New Zealand, but very few in Australasia.
Yes, I only know of one Atom 1, and that is in Australia in pieces, I believe. There were 2 Atom 1s that I know of in New Zealand, this being one of them, and another one that is in Christchurch, and the owner is a dead keen motorsport guy, and he already has an Atom 2, lucky him, and he decided with this, that the motor in it, he wanted to play around with the car and see what he could do in the way of changes to it, and he decided, well, he had 2 cars, which one would he start cannibalising, and he chose the Atom 1. And he's since taken the Rover out, put the Honda Integra Type R motor in it and put it on engine mounts.
So this certainly is a very rare car, what we're standing beside today.
The only one in New Zealand that I'm aware of.
On to the Atom 3. You were saying earlier, Jared, that motorbike racing has been in your family.
Yes.
And it came a point where will I, won't I, and the won't I won, and you decided to go for the next option, the Atom 3. Tell me how you discovered the Atom.
Well, I saw the original Top Gear, which by now is quite infamous with Jeremy Clarkson's face going all wobbly at speed, and I'd seen it earlier in a previous run and thought, oh, that's nice, I'd like one of those, and didn't really take it much further than that. And then I saw the complete clip again several months later and thought, oh, I wonder how much they are, and therein lay the problem. Yeah. Once you've put the order in, it's pretty compulsive to keep it in there and wait for the car.
But I would think that with the rarity of the vehicles, you wouldn't have a problem if you were wanting to move on from this.
To be honest, I don't see that happening.
So it's a car for well, not life, but a car for a good 10 years probably.
At least 10 years, yeah. I don't see me selling this anytime soon.
Now, of course, when we have the official track days and you can play with the car and actually get it up to speed, one of the things that is well known about the Atom, it's not a particularly fast top-end car, no, but it's just the sheer rate that it gets to where it gets to. Tell me a wee bit about that.
It's fairly quick. Like the 300 horse car that Clarkson reviews does 2.8 seconds to 100 k's. So that's, Bugatti Veyron territory, and certainly faster than Ferrari and Porsche and anything else for that matter. So it's quite an impressive car, and of course it goes equally well in corners.
One of the things I noticed when we were bringing the cars down here this afternoon, the lock, or the lack of lock, and you were laughing at one stage trying to manoeuvre between the large trees we've got here, and you said, I'm on full lock. Yeah. Tell me a wee bit about that, because you said that works very well for you on the open road at speed. Maybe yes, not the best as we're trying to manoeuvre in a tight space.
Yes, and it's probably like, I suppose, like a lot of race cars, I don't believe that they have much in the way of a decent lock compared to your ordinary family drive. And and the suspension's much the same too. And when you're manoeuvring it at slow speeds, a 3-point turn sometimes turns into a 6-point turn. But once you are up to normal motorway speed, or even just ordinary residential speed limits, it's just a setup in the geometry of the car, it all changes. You've only got to turn the wheel a little bit like that, and she just very responsive.
One of the things I thought was interesting today, as we were preparing to film the cars and deciding where we were going to place them with the sun, the gentleman whose property we're on at the moment, in fact, was on his ride-on lawnmower. He came up and said, "Oh, what are these?" We started talking about those. Suddenly he suggested we should do it down on a more sheltered spot. I assume that happens every time you guys are out. You pull up somewhere, and what happens as a rule?
They generally ask the standard 3 or 4 questions. Where did you get it? Did you make it yourself? How fast does it go? And how much does it cost?
And of course, we never talk about the cost. It was the right money on the day, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that's what you're going to tell the accountant.
I've already told the accountant.
I've noticed both the cars are of similar dark tones. You've got the dark green and you've got a black vehicle. There was at one stage a yellow vehicle that met an unfortunate ending at Pukekohe. Do you have a colour choice when you're purchasing these? Or you did more recently the 2008 model. Did you have a colour choice?
Yeah, they've got 7 or 8 standard colours. Black, white, red, orange, green, blue, but they will pretty much make any colour you like. It's just a slightly extra option charge.
And tell me, when you're getting the vehicle serviced, because clearly it needs a regular service, where do you take it?
Well, I do most of my servicing myself, and I know John does as well. Certainly in terms of oil change, oil filter's just there, and you just take the back tray off and you can get to everything else. So it's quite easy to service, and any old garage will do most of the servicing.
John, with the 2 vehicles here, Atom 1 and Atom 3, let's just take a look at some of the changes that have occurred between the 2 vehicles.
Okay, probably the first change is in the actual chassis itself. This has a much higher hoop, as you can see, and a higher airbox. This has actually got the air filter, and the radiator reservoir tank is actually stashed in behind here, and the whole lot comes off with just these clips. Same with the T-tray. There's also the style and the fact that the Atom 3 is slightly wider in the chassis than what the Atom 1 and Atom 2 is. In the engine department, the most noticeable thing, of course, is over there you've got a Honda Integra Type R. Here you've got a Rover K20 motor.
John, while we're just talking about the intake at the back here, I'd thought that was a roll bar, but you've suggested that's not strong enough. Explain to our viewers how the roll bar system would work.
Okay, well, the fact that this has no forward or aft support means that if the car were to twist over and going forward and that was whacked, it wouldn't probably take too much force to actually snap it off or bend it because of the weld. So there is actually a roll bar that goes on the car that actually affixes to the top here, comes over and fixes to the car on both sides, and then has 2 rods that actually tie back and go through this fiberglass panel, yes, which the UK owners call the T-tray for obvious reasons. Good place to put your cup anyway. Yep. And actually comes back to these.
In fact, you've got the bolt holes there already.
Bolt holes there. On the Atom 3, they actually tie back to a...
Well, let's have a look at the Atom 3 and just point out the difference on that.
Well, there's a clip mount here on Jared's car, whereas I would have to drill these out to take the bar through, the car's actually made so that you can actually put them straight through, and he's already got the bolt holes for the roll cage already in this gusset here.
Jared, we're in the Atom 3. Talk me through the controls here.
Well, aside from the big round steering wheel thing at the front, we've got standard dash with RPM and speedo, indicator lights and all that usual stuff. If I turn it on, well, you've got an electronic dash for all your fuel and water temperature and various other car measurements. headlights, emergency light and the hazard light, and obviously ignition switches in behind there.
Now the steering wheel comes off as well, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Perfect.
Just
So
like
that's a great deterrent to steal it.
Yeah, I find it really hard to drive the car away without the steering wheel
In
attached.
fact,
So.
let's leave that off for a minute. Tell me about this.
This is a brake bias adjuster. What it does is it balances the cylinder pressures between the front and rear brakes. So if you're setting it up for road use, you might have a bit more rear bias, whereas if you're on the track, you want to come into a corner really fast and slam on the brakes quite hard. And of course you don't want the rears coming loose then, so you put more front bias on, which means you can come into a corner a lot faster and brake harder.
Very good. We were talking earlier about the average size and weight of the owners, and you recently did a poll on your club site,
Yep.
and the average owner was over 6 foot. And in fact, I'm just on 6 foot, and I'm absolutely staggered how much room. Plenty of room in the footwell here,
Yep.
plenty of room for my shoulders. It's a very comfortable sports car.
Yeah, it's surprisingly comfortable. People take one look at it and go, oh, it's going to be windy, it's going to be cold, you're going to get wet when it rains. Yes, you are.
I think
but
you'd be
it is
too
quite
much fun
comfortable
to
car.
really worried about that.
Oh yeah,
I'm
definitely.
still a bit concerned about the lack of windscreen here, but it's just an amazing feeling.
It's even more so when you're going a bit faster.
Fantastic. Hey, look, it's been a really interesting day with both John and Jared. Thanks, guys, very, very
Welcome.
much. Atom 1 and Atom 3. I'm sure when you see them on the street, give them a wave. They'll be real keen to wave back. And look, if you see the cars parked at the side of the road, pop up, say
Come
hi,
and say
have a
hi.
chat. The guys love to share the passion. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Well,
This afternoon we're in sunny Huia, and on my right I have a brand new 2009 Mazda MX-5, and on my left I have a first generation Mazda MX-5 from 1993. This year the Mazda celebrated its 20th anniversary in February, and ironically this car, which was originally launched in 1989 at the Chicago Motor Show, and to celebrate its 20th anniversary, this car was launched at the Chicago Motor Show in 2009 and has just gone on sale in New Zealand as of the 1st of March. The Mazda MX-5 was redesigned in 1998 and then again in 2005. Then in 2006 we saw the introduction of this model with the retractable power hardtop. The Mazda MX-5 has won 170 awards globally. In 2005 this car was the New Zealand Car of the Year, and this car was the New Zealand Car of the Year in 1990. As the MX-5 has matured over the last 20 years, more and more specification has been added to meet customer demands, but also to meet the demands of global safety authorities. However, one thing that hasn't been lost is its 50-50 weight distribution and great driving character. This particular 2009 MX-5 is powered by a 2-litre MZR engine. It's got a 6-speed active-matic gearbox with a sequential manual override, so you can choose to drive it as a manual or an automatic, depending on your situation. I've often been asked, where did the name MX-5 come from? It actually comes from Mazda Experimental Project Number 5, and hence the car was called the MX-5. In the Japanese market it was known as the Unos Roadster, and in America and other overseas markets it was known as the Mazda Miata MX-5. Since 1989, some 857,000 Mazda MX-5 vehicles have been sold globally, so you can imagine that there's probably some 857,000 very happy owners. In 2005, to celebrate the launch of the Generation 3 model in New Zealand, we set a Guinness World Record by having a 4-kilometre long parade of MX-5s at Alexandra Racecourse.